One of the things I want to talk about is if you go to quantification and modeling, you're talking about creating rules for perceiving knowledge. And this is obviously a huge field, but one of the ways that I deal with creating rules for knowledge and for modeling has been in my conversations with friends. And this is a quote from Sasha Kagan, who recently wrote a book on art and sustainability. And part of our conversation was over the role of humility. He wrote, "My main point across my book is less the humility aspect than the auto-egopoiesis aspect, i.e. the sensibility to the unexpected, that openness to disturbance, which is precisely what I find lacking in Luhmann's analysis. Maybe the goal of not being afraid of complexity, as David Healy phrases it, is less about untangling the web pointed at by Moran than about appreciating the beauty of contradictions, their logic, and learning to think in complex, ambivalent terms. And thanks to that sensibility to complexity, not untangling and reducing them as science traditionally tries to do, and thereby dissolving that beautiful and insightful complexity. This is where science still has a lot to learn from art and from life, and where scientists often refuse to tread." Well, my idea of where I needed to tread in 1990 was I felt that we were at a decade of choice about what we were going to do with the environment, and I wanted to do something about it. So what I did was I moved to a remote fishing island off the coast of Maine, and I bought a town dump, and I proceeded to live there for the next, well, it's been 20 years now, and I restored that environment. And I studied it. I studied not only the degradation of the site, but what it looked like around me, which in many ways appeared pristine. And what I decided finally, because I had a background in ecofeminism, if you haven't figured that out by now, then I don't know, but what I realized was that what has caused our environmental problems is our human relationships to each other as well as to the earth. The problem is what we get in bed with, both literally and figuratively. What you're looking at is some lost drift nets that were recovered from the dump. And they are the plastic nets that fish the ocean. They're enormous, they're 7 miles wide, they go on fishing for 7 years, and they trap everything. And you may know that there's an enormous plastic garbage patch now in the Pacific that continues to kill marine life. And to me, this was the ultimate metaphor for our familiar habits and routines that we take for granted that are invisible and kill us. So I began to look at the environment as a series of possibilities for metaphors. I did a project which was the restoration in Maine. That took 10 years. It was called Ghost Nets after those drift nets. And I divided the project into 3 years of three sessions of 3 years each, and each represented a different metaphorical relationship to the environment. But after I had completed the project, I began to think about how it might not only be a model, but might be applied to other environments. So I began to look at the island I was living on, and I realized that at the center of the island, there was a point where the water, between the salt water and the fresh water, had been cut off by the work of the Army Corps of Engineers. And to me, it looked as though the island were a large heart, and the 2 sides of the heart had been interrupted. So the question was to open that up. I began looking at the whole Gulf of Maine and the relationships in the Gulf of Maine. And as you may know, the fisheries are crashing all over the world. And in the Gulf of Maine, they've been trying to track the cod. The cod used to be the top predator in the Gulf of Maine, and they've been tagging where they found cod. So from this map, you might think there's a lot of cod still out there.